I will happily look it up.
All right.
Yeah, it's completely good.
It'll be done by Candace. People must. Sounds.
Yeah, this one.
Let me go.
I'm supposed to.
We're good? You're good? Great, perfect. Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is April Seither. I'm a town councilor.
Nick McGee, town councilor.
And this is our quarterly Councilor Corner Live. We have been doing these every 3 months or so for the past year and a half, almost 2 years. And we chose the topic tonight to be short-term rentals. We drew quite a crowd at our ordinance committee meeting a few weeks ago. And so we figured we would take this opportunity to open it up to a public discussion. Unlike ordinance committee meetings where we have a set agenda and each person is limited to 3 minutes to speak, and we kind of, we're there to do business as the ordinance committee. This is the opposite. This is our opportunity as the council to hear from the community. As moderators, Nick and I do not have an agenda tonight. We will talk about whatever it is that you all want to talk about. We will do our very best to make sure that we kind of disperse the comments and hear from people who would like to speak. Online people, hi and welcome. We will do our best to kind of navigate people in the room and people online. But really the whole goal of being here tonight is to hear from you guys and what you would like to talk about, what you would like the council to hear on the topic of short-term rentals.
Yeah, and if it's all right, I'd love to hear everyone's names in the room. I don't
Yes.
know everyone. Maybe just kind of work left to right, introducing yourself. We have another councilor present.
No. T. Marie Katerina, Scarborough Town Council. I also am a realtor.
Julie Bailey, Bailey Realty Group and Bailey Vacation Rentals. Allison Bailey with Bailey Vacation Rentals.
Kate Gunter, owner.
Sure. Hi. Welcome, guys.
Brad Thompson,
Susan Thompson.
Hi.
we're married.
Hi, Richard.
Jane Wagner.
Mark Wagner.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
We're married.
We're married too.
Each other? Oh, just trying.
Brian Marino with Port Real Estate Group.
Hi, Brian.
Matthew Chamberlain, Regency Realty Group.
Hi, now.
Sue Hamill.
I see. Okay, and online, if this, we're gonna do our very best to navigate this. I realize that sometimes it gets dominated, the conversation gets dominated by the people in the room. And when we're in the classroom at the public safety building, my back is actually to the screen, for those of you who are online. And so it does become a little bit more challenging to kind of navigate the meeting. We do have Autumn here from our planning department who is helping us with our tech tonight. So if you do have something that you would like to say online or you'd like to jump into the conversation, just go ahead and raise your hand. And we will do our very best to kind of navigate the dual situation that we have by doing these virtual.
And by way of just trying to help kick it off a little, I think that some of the things that we've identified that are tough for us to either define or get our arms around. Like, what is a short-term rental? Like, how do you define that specifically? We're hearing stories of people posting tents, campers, half sheds on Airbnb sites and in using them and actually getting rentals into our neighborhoods using those. So how do you define what is a short-term rental? What's a period of time that would qualify? What type of building structure? What type of length is okay? Like, if it's in a different part of town, these are all things we're really curious to hear about. So like April had said, it's an open floor. If you have ideas, please share them. But those are some of the ideas, like some of the issues we'll be struggling with as we try to build towards something that's reasonable. I think that's the ultimate goal. So
one of the things that we have found, so I typically moderate these, and then I bring whichever is the most relevant counselor kind of with me based on the topic. But I think I've moderated all of them, maybe with the exception of one. And so one thing that's really helpful is if someone else in the room says something that really resonates with you, feel free to say, aye, or here, or raise your hand and kind of show, this is not formal like a council meeting where we all have to kind of, sit quietly. Obviously, we don't interrupt one another and, you let people have their say. But, as a way of kind of building consensus around an idea, or if someone says, I would like to talk about limits on short-term rentals, and you feel that way too, feel free to, put your hand up and say, me too. And so we kind of try and keep these things fluid in that sense also.
Can I ask, what is the best way to let you all know I have someone with a hand up? Because I know they can see it, and we can see it, but you can't. So I wasn't- So we do have someone with their hand up.
Let's start online. We never
Let's
start
throw it-
online.
Yeah, let's,
Christina, you're all set.
Hey, thank you. I was just curious, like, are we up on the screen? Can you see our faces?
if you have your camera on, we would be able to see your face. You do not have your camera on, so we can.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for the interruption. Thanks.
Great question.
We know who you are.
Exactly.
Got you.
We're Googling it right now.
Okay, is there anybody who's like dying to get us kicked off? Yay, go for it.
Susan Thompson, Higgins Beach. We have 2 small family cottages that have been rentals, weekly rentals in the summer for over 50 years. And about 10 years ago, the state of Maine decided to bill us like we're a Holiday Inn. Our guests now have to pay a 9.5% charge to them, which I think is extremely unfair. So now we're looking at, is Scarborough gonna tag something on? I think the beach areas have been historic, and I don't know of a short term less than a week, unless you're desperate over Labor Day weekend and you take a 4-day. But there's too much cleaning involved. So we hope you respect that history and don't clump us in with somebody who's renting a tent in their backyard.
Are other people concerned about the imposition of a fee? Is that something, right? That's what I'm hearing, is that kind of, what happens if Scarborough decides we're gonna start charging,
Well,
a
no more
fee?
fees.
No more fees.
No more fees. How
Okay,
about that? I'll
Okay.
Put that out there.
No, I think there should be a permitting fee.
okay,
And I think the city should inspect the unit. And I think the city should be responsible for making sure it's habitable, making sure it's life safety, it's fire extinguishers, everything. And then stay away.
sure. Okay,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know how Old Orchard does it, and if you have a short-term rental, you need to get a license. It's good for 2 years. It also includes your business property. So because you are now operating as business, you've got to pay property taxes on your appliances in the unit. And so they have a standard that they figured out that if it's a 1-bedroom, it's X. If it's a 2-bedroom, it's whatever. But they do the inspection and make sure that you have the egress windows. Some of these units are in basements.
Yeah.
And you've got to have an egress window. But once they do that the first time, then you're good to go. You just renew, online. No more inspections.
okay.
I like that.
Other people, we have some agreement, some consensus around this idea that, we would do an initial inspection. And potentially have a license fee that is associated with that. But then after that, it would just be a renewal process is what I'm hearing.
It would be a life safety inspection too, not necessarily a full-on code enforcement. It'd be life safety, so fire, smoke detectors, egress window, and then good to go, right? Is that pretty much a
Well,
fair consensus?
it is a duplication because my insurance company inspects my house every 2 years. I mean, I had to add a railing to the basement that's been there for 50 years. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, to get a homeowners, they're real particular in Pine Point because of the water issues and the safety issues, the snow, everything. I mean, we are covered. They made me add carbon monoxide detectors and all that stuff. So, and they know that we're a short-term rental. So I, have extra coverage for that. So I don't know why why the town would be burdened with inspecting when it should already be done. And your zoning I live in Myrtle Beach. My full-time home is in Myrtle Beach, and trust me, we have every vacation issue you could possibly have. But they're real specific on number of units. I mean, if there's a homeless guy sleeping under the beach walkway, you call the police. I mean, if somebody's camping out in the woods, that's a creep alert. I mean, you're gonna call the police anyway. So I wonder what is already in place that isn't being, used. So, there's a little 2 cents there.
Okay, why don't we go online?
Caitlin, I think you had your hand up earlier on.
I did. So I think if we're talking about fees, I mean, I have a small short-term seasonal rental down at Pine Point. We market it as a tiny house. It's a cottage. It's a 200 square foot cottage. I think if we're going to a fee schedule or an inspection schedule, I think that we need to make sure it's something that's considered probably not the same across the board, because there's quite a bit of difference between my 200 square foot cottage and some of the very nice cottages across the road that are actually on the beach. I think other things to consider are maybe, rather than going to a straight inspection, maybe having a list of standards that the city expects or suggests that people have. Like, I mean, the woman who just spoke, my insurance company requires me to have a certification that says I have fire extinguisher available, that I have fire alarms, that I have a carbon monoxide. And I think just starting with that list of the standards and making sure that they're standards that can be enforced, and then also maybe flexible based on the type of unit, I think would be very helpful.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll go to another online.
Ellen?
Hi, I am with HigginsBeachMaine.com. We're a professional vacation rental company. We've been in the Higgins Beach area for about 20 years. I'm also on the board of the Vacation Rental Professionals of Maine, and I'd just like to take a departure from the fee subject for just a moment and lend some insight to the definition of a short-term rental as we, Verpom, see it. We actually were, years and years ago, we came up against the hotel industry when the question of everyone paying lodging tax came together. And we were tasked as an organization to come up with this definition. And in part, it is a stay of less than 29 days. It is different from other types of lodging in that the rental is of the whole property, the house, apartment, condo, cottage, etc., to a group that is comprised of family or friends who all know each other and are staying in the purpose, i.e., families on vacation together. We don't rent out parts of our property to different people, so we're not acting as B&Bs or Airbnbs where maybe you're renting a room in my home. All meals are cooked by the renters themselves rather than offered by the management, again, like a bed and breakfast. And on the whole, just as a side note, we professional vacation rental managers, I know our company and Bailey, we make sure that our properties meet basic life and safety standards. We personally have a safety checklist. I've been certified by a company that is internationally known for safety inspections, and we have safety requirements in place. For example, the gentleman who mentioned fire extinguishers and that type of thing. So we do check our cottages for that. So back to fees, I just wanted to interject on the definition. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
We have one more online.
We'll take one more online and then we'll get some feedback from the room again.
Christina?
Thank you. So just as an introduction, I'm also a realtor, but I'm more here because my partner is Dan LaRue. He is an owner with his brothers of a property in Vesper Street, and have recently taken over management of renting this their property. And in regard to inspections, though, I really have to say, like, the the onus would be on the owner of the property, who these owners have owned these properties for many years, decades, right? And so it's in their best interest also to make sure that these properties are safe for their occupants. And so, and, you know, I just think that that goes with common home ownership and maintenance. To that point, I just want to introduce Dan LaRue.
Hi, how are y'all doing? I had property down at one time, property down at Pine Point, and the fire department would come in yearly and go through the property and inspect it. I would not be opposed to something like that happening. Actually, I think it's good that they come through the properties and, you know, they can give us some insight on what needs to be done to make them safe. The other thing, as far as fees, I don't agree with the fees. I mean, after all, most of us are renting the properties down there for one reason. So we can hold on to them because of the taxes. I think the taxes are high enough to offset that we should not have to pay fees on the property. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
So if the.
This is our show, yeah.
I just want to get a temperature of the room. So if the registration fee, say, like the Old Orchard Beach example, say you had a 2-year license and the registration fee was $25. Is that acceptable? If it was $100, is that acceptable?
What are you gonna use the money for?
I imagine
Staff time.
a supplement code
Another fee that you
enforcement.
Fund, I think.
Yeah, if you're gonna have inspections for life safety, there might be need for another code enforcement or part-time code enforcement
Right.
officer.
That's it, that's.
But I guess the question I would have is $25 scare anyone away? Does $100 scare anyone away? Not that anyone wants to pay more fees, trust me. It's just generalized question.
I think it's a principal thing. Yeah, no, I think we're, I mean, what percentage of the, fire and police calls are to vacationers as opposed to residents? Good question. I mean, and we also don't have kids in schools. I mean, that's, if there's 150 families move into the 100 properties, and then you have 100 kids, that's a whole different game. I mean, your short-term rentals are really, I mean, they're kind of a golden ticket for Scarborough. Because we're all paying the taxes, we're all maintaining our property because we want to compete on that and we want to make them safe, we want to make them luxurious and as nice as possible so people keep coming back. I don't know if it's, you know, the tents are a whole nother issue. If somebody had a yurt in their backyard next to mine, I'd be calling. But and I guess the other thing is, where are the problems? Where are the ones that people are really pissed off about it? Is it neighborhoods? I get it. Pine Point is vacation, Higgins Beach is vacation, that's why they've been forever, but maybe it's the little loud people who would be pissed off about the car in the driveway, whether it was a short-term rental or not, I don't know.
So cost to serve, you know, when we talk about these things at the council level, one of the things that we're always talking about or thinking about in terms of talking about more fees is, do we need an additional staff member? How are we going to maintain?
We need someone to clean the beach in August.
Right.
I mean,
Sure,
that's a
absolutely.
different
And maybe,
game.
and maybe some of your registration fee, you know, we could talk about how those people are using the beach. Those people are using some of our public
They
services.
become a dedicated fund.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I ask a question, because I'm the one who stirred this pot and I'll own it.
We'll go to three, but then we're gonna go, we're gonna go. through the room.
Is
I have
my
hands up.
concern is housing. And it's housing for workforce housing and affordable housing. Now, let me
Okay.
finish, please. How many of you do winter rentals? Because that was always a big thing too, that, okay, great, you can rent out for a week in the summer, you know, you made your money to help pay your taxes, whatever. And then there was an opportunity for teachers or whomever, because I did it when I was a first year teacher years ago, to do a winter rental, which was cheaper. It was less expensive. It helped make an impact on the lack of housing that's very real in this area, for those who don't make a lot of money. And I noticed, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. You do the winter rental.
We have two No,
But
we have
just
two
for
of
show of
summer
hands.
rentals and winter rentals.
Okay.
So also, many of these people don't vote in Scarborough.
Mm,
So when you think even our winter rentals, if they're transient,
Yeah.
they may not take the time to register to vote.
Yeah, and it's got nothing to do with voting
Okay.
or not,
Yeah.
it's just people need a roof over their heads.
Yeah.
And it helps our economy to have people not having to commute for an hour and a half to come work at a job that's like a bank teller or, you know.
How many people use their summer rentals for one purpose, you know, and then do
Yeah.
long-term winter rentals? Just by show of hands, if you have a
I had an
long-term
off
winter.
season, I mean.
Sure, if
yeah.
you manage properties
Yeah.
that kind of operate on
Okay.
that cycle.
Because frankly, the reason I brought it up now is because of the new LD 2003, which the state put in, which allows for a greater density of housing and the so-called ADUs or home in-law apartments, which aren't allowed in Scarborough. Is how many of those I would, just Jean Marie speaking, I don't want to see all of those going to short-term rentals, particularly in neighborhoods. So that's why I just wanted to bring it forward to hear from people what they think and you know, what's the impact and.
Does anybody else
whatever.
have anything before I say something else? No, I know.
This-
Yeah, we
Yeah,
gotta
no,
break
yeah.
people.
about that.
To collect my thoughts here, I just. As far as ADUs go, my understanding is that, good evening,
Hello, Rob, how are you?
I'm good. My name is Rob Edgerly. I'm with Main Life Real Estate across the street and here as an owner of a property and representing people living in properties and are looking for properties. My understanding with ADUs is that it has to be your primary residence. So for many of us, that won't be that won't even come into play.
Well, my concern is people using those ADUs as short-term rentals, even though,
Yeah.
they're located in the primary residence. And then you've got this separate space that could be rented out for longer than just one night. Or
Yeah.
2 nights.
Well, the market, I mean, rents are controlled by the market.
Right.
And if I want to rent out an ADU unit at my home, most of my clients and myself included feel that I should be able to do that. That might help offset and help me pay my difference.
Right,
I'm sure
but-
other people would probably feel the
But
same thing as down at the beach.
Right.
People have held onto those properties at the beach for
Right.
years because they've been able to rent them.
And I'm not saying I don't think people should be able to rent them at all. I'm just saying. If everyone's renting them like hotel rooms. Then it's taking away from the opportunity for others. To rent, and I hear from, I mean, these guys do too, I'm finished, Rob. That in some neighborhoods, there have been some short-term rentals that we hear about, we get emails on them. Saying, you know, oh, it's different people in there every day, blah, 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 this is a neighborhood, this is a place to have them. So as counselors, we struggle with that too. I mean, I get it, I mean, I'm a realtor, I believe in private property rights. But as you guys all know, and I teach in real estate classes and Jeff teaches you in real estate classes, some of your private property rights. Are somewhat limited by things like zoning and, you know, whatever, so anyway, that's a.
Okay, Jean Marie will have now sparked 20 new comments, which is okay. I'm gonna that's okay, that's okay. I'm gonna go right here in the middle
All right.
and then I'll go back and then we'll hit you guys online, I promise.
So a lot of comments because these are realtors and Jean Marie brought up a good point. And one of the things that, you know, I think I do support the registration and like fee and inspection. And it's not to penalize the realty market because they do a great job and they make sure the places are safe. But as Jean Marie mentioned, we're in not a beach community. We're on Spurwink Road, we back up to the marsh, and we have a direct neighbor, the VRBOs. And so they don't know where we live. But and so I do feel the pain. We also own a couple of condos, investment properties in Portland. And we go through the rental registration in Portland, there's a fee, there's inspections, we've had the fire department in and all of that to make sure they're safe. So, you know, we see both sides of it. But it's the beach communities.
But it's a
are
long,
probably
ours are
fine.
long-term rentals. They're
Yeah, they're
1 year
not, they're
minimum.
not, they're 1 year minimum, but that's our condo association, so. But, so, the beach communities are one thing, and I know that they're managed by the real estate people and everything else, most of them. But it's what you mentioned, as it's kind of gone outside because they're very expensive. More and more people are doing Airbnbs and VRBOs.
My question then to the group, and if you have a little, thumbs up and you want to give online, how many people would like to see the council or the town kind of talk about this separately and say, okay, maybe we should entertain a set of conversation and rules and parameters around some of our beach communities, and then, explore a different set of rules or, regulations for those that are not in our beach communities, just to kind of get a consensus or a poll. Oh, that sparked all kinds of. And that's okay. This gesture is also,
Do we have a set of rules already?
No,
For us?
none.
Well, do we have noise ordinance rules?
Sure, we have a good neighbor ordinance,
General.
and just general living in town
Sure.
rules.
Which we all have to abide by.
Yes.
We have systems in place to control that or.
Well, yes, sort of.
No.
Hold on, hold on, I'm gonna go,
Police department here that can take care of those things as they come up, right?
yes.
And have you had some issues that have come up?
Yes.
Sure,
We've come home to people on
in our backyard.
Yeah, that would be.
on our
Well, then that's
furniture.
something you can call the police.
But one of the reasons we're here is just to say, okay, so this is now impacting, if we were to, we've tried to do you do the neighborly thing, right? We all, many
You
of
gotta
us
live-
grew up wherever, and that's what you do, you approach nicely and then you try a second time or what have you, but when it's just going to deaf ear and you see the noise and hear it and the disruptions, I
And it
mean,
takes away from the neighbor.
we have to call, we're supposed to call the police every
Yeah.
time.
And I would say like,
now we've
their
got
life doesn't deserve to have to
enforcement.
call the police 12 times a year. That's
That
also
costs
not.
the town
okay.
money,
Right,
that's the
sure.
reason I think it'd be great just to have some sort of registration. If, it's gonna be on an honor system in my world, that's what I would do, and you would hope people would pay like we do and like most people would. And then at least there's some sort of, the police station knows, oh, this is a rental or blah, blah. There's just some kind of responsibility.
Accountability.
Because the owner in many cases is not around. You can't reach them. And honestly, they're good.
Well, I don't know, does the town really know how many Airbnbs, VRBOs are going up?
We have an informal study that was done of what, 300
Around
leases?
300 to 400
Yeah.
known,
And that's no.
right,
And
Yeah.
because, through the years, we've discussed this and, and we know it's spreading, everything's changing, right? Scarborough is not, and yet I love the beaches. You guys probably all recognize me from walking a beach. I think there's some way we should be able to put an overlay on a zoning. I don't know, it sounds so easy for me. I was. Okay, but.
I mean, Higgins
you
is
know,
easy, but the rest.
And
would be-
so I would love to see a group of people maybe sit down. I'd be happy to volunteer and just try to figure out what is logical. So that at least, let's say you buy a property in a beach area, this has been legacy. I mean, we've all done it. I was on the beaches in the 50s and that's where we knew it was third generational back then oftentimes, but it's to pay your taxes. That's why mom and dad had that summer place. You get a lot of repetitive customers, which is also a little more security, in my opinion. And security, I guess, is really, if I had this whole thing, and I've spent a lot of my own personal time talking to counselors and other towns. I really think it's about the security of you and the whole neighborhood feel that many of us, in Scarborough are really worried it's getting stripped away with the growth. And so,
The people who make us feel the most safe, I think when it comes to mind, you do think the police force. And I think you're exactly right, where it's coming from just the thought process of being on the open-minded too, and creating this discussion, because no one should ever have to deal with someone else in their backyard, whether it's your neighbor or someone that's operating out of a short-term rental. And so I think you're right, like maybe there is some layer or some type of level where if after the second time that the police have been called, or the third time the police have been called, then what happens? Because that is that is a safety concern. Or for things like that, where it gets to that measure of, what can be, like you said, that medium threshold, like here's your first few steps, and then this is where it goes after this, if it really is a point of concern. And that must be frustrating too, if you do talk to your neighbor and you try and call that person and no one answers. So I can understand that too.
Well, okay, coming to you,
So.
and then I'll go to Sue, and then I'm going online.
Great. Workforce housing.
Yep.
You want more of it.
Yeah.
What's the city doing to get it? What's the
I've
city doing
got-
to make it affordable? What's the city doing to affiliate?
Let me tell you what I've done.
But I'm still asking the question. So it is not cheap for anyone to do anything in this town and develop it. What's the town doing?
Well, we did have, and I'm not sure where it's ended up, we had, I introduced it, that conversion of hotels, because during COVID, there was, the whole mess with Comfort Inn and this and that and the other thing. So there was a developer who wanted to convert one of the hotels to workforce housing, which would be rental. For like I don't wanna say boarding house, because that's not the right way, because they'd be small units to be rented out, that would have been more affordable. So there is a concept, and we did start working on an ordinance that will allow for that in certain zones, and where is it now?
Just waiting for a free council meeting.
Yeah, okay.
So what you say?
So that's one thing that
Okay.
we've done, and I guess
That's
from a developer point of view. Right now, part of the problem with, and I don't wanna get into the wrong thing with the real estate, it's so expensive to build
So
anything.
what you're saying, you're just taking away this to create that.
I'm not taking away
You're
anything.
taking away.
If someone wants to
You're
make
taking away
that
a hotel
conversion.
building that has short-term rentals to make it long-term.
No, well, it's up to the owner. If the owner's
But you're
making
saying-
money on the, I'm not
You are
forcing
helping
them
that
to do that,
conversion.
I'm saying that if an owner wanted to do that, that'd be fine.
What about from the ground up,
What do you mean?
developing raw land, create?
I'd love to do that, but if I could get money from the state and the feds to give to the
What
developers
if the city, instead of having?
Let's.
All right, Kathy.
I have an issue with accessory dwelling units, which there are many. And my understanding is, and I could be wrong, that you cannot rent an accessory dwelling unit for less than 28 consecutive days. And that's just a joke. It relies on people reporting it to the town. And there's no enforcement of that rule, and that the owner needs to live in one of the units for 3 months. That's not happening. I mean, that's part of our existing ordinance. And I see around me in Pine Point, people who have remodeled and they've turned a garage into an accessory dwelling unit, or they've turned a basement into an accessory dwelling unit. And I'm paying 2 sewer bills because I have a legal. They're not paying 2 sewer bills. And like the town isn't aware of the fact that this is going on. But isn't their sewer still involved with your sewer? Your two, you have 2, you still have one that goes out. I live in a 2-unit, not to interrupt, my help. I have a 2-unit in Pine Point, right on East Grand. There's 2 owners now. I used to own the whole building with my ex. Upstairs and downstairs, we have one outlet that goes out to public sewer that we pay for. We both get charged separately. Right. So if you have 2 in your home that you're doing, you're getting paid that. If they have 2, this is still one. It's still going to that one outlet. That we're still paying for. But there, no, like you don't really understand. I mean, no, I do because I have the same. Yeah, and so you have a legal 2-unit, but people who currently, I mean, there's no enforcement, and there are accessory dwelling units that are running in the town, and especially in beach areas, that it's just been, you know, gradually over time. And I think that's something that needs to get addressed. The fact that they are not supposed to be rented for less than 28 days, and the fact that the sewer isn't collecting what they should be collecting from these units. They've got to have the capacity. That was the way it was explained to me, that someone may only live there for 3 months, but they still have to have the capacity. And I think that's a good reason to have some kind of an inspection and some kind of a, you know, a roster or a registration. And that is an important issue for me. The other issue is I'm seeing short-term rentals creep away from the beaches. And we're starting to see them like going up Pine Point Road in areas that have traditionally been year-round neighborhoods. And I have read a lot about this. I think it's important that the town take charge, and the sooner the better, because all of these houses on streets like Ocean View or CD Landing Road, they shouldn't be, you know, they really shouldn't be, but they've always been traditional neighborhoods. And once they get converted to a short-term rental, it's really hard to roll it back. Because people need the money, they bought it planning on it being a rental, and.
Okay, I'm gonna go online. And I know it's, this is the dichotomy we live in, so I'm gonna go online and look at how many hands we have. So we'll do the best we can to kind of keep the conversation fluid, and go ahead, Autumn, please.
Hi, Ellen, you're ready.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I have about 37 comments, but I'll try and be concise. Mark and Jane, I know where you live. And I also understand and feel your pain because I know what you go through there. The first thing, fees, I just want to touch on that because I also own property in Portland. I have some long-term rentals, and we are subject to fees and inspections. And if we do move to some sort of a fee structure, and Nick, to your point, no, $25 is no big deal, and neither is 100. But I think if we do something along that, we need to make sure that all the pieces are in place. We have to have the additional staffing on hand rather than saying, okay, we're going to put these fees in place and then it's going to be a year before we get to you, or we're going to inspect and tell you, you need to do this, but it's going to be a year before we can re-inspect. Number two, to Jean Marie, I also feel your pain about the workforce and housing, affordable housing shortage. But I think that anyone who owns a vacation rental, especially at Pine Point or Higgins Beach, would argue that these properties, 9.85 out of 10 would not qualify as affordable housing or workforce housing under the basic parameters of that definition. And I think the beaches are different. In most cases, we vacation rental managers like Susan Thompson, Allison Bailey, myself, we are not doing nightly rentals. We're typically doing, you know, if ever, a minimum of 3, and those might be in June or September, and sometimes not even that. From, you know, middle of June till the middle of September, there's 7-night stays. And Allison, to your point, I would agree that if we put something, any sort of regulation in place, or like complaints to the police department, there need to be parameters, like you say, and there needs to be a consequence. And I think so many times we say, okay, you know, you file a complaint. Well, what if this is the 3rd complaint? Then maybe there's a steep fine. And then an owner or a vacation property manager would be more involved to make sure that those complaints aren't happening. And to that, I think, and April, you can probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think there have been maybe 5 complaints against rentals in the past year.
I did request through public safety, some residents had asked for kind of like a search query and so we went back a year, and they're limited because as we've already pointed out, like there is no registry that they can go to and say, this address is 100% being used as a short-term rental. And so we can associate this call with a 100%, you know, this was a short-term rental call. And so we're a little bit limited in our search capabilities in terms of reporting out the exact number of calls, but known renters, you know, with some degree of confidence, the number of calls was very low. And I want to, you know, shout out to our public safety department for trying to supply me with those numbers, but then also recognizing the limitations of really being able to give me those numbers based on the fact that right now everybody's on a level playing field when it comes to just our straight up addresses.
April, can I ask Ellen a question? Ellen, is the one.
You can, we're on 3.5 minutes. I'm not timing strictly, but I do want to keep everybody rolling.
This is an apropos question.
Okay,
that
apropos.
I think would
Go for it.
I'm curious from any of you guys, Ellen and any people who are into this rental management, well, I'd love you for doing it. Are you generally seeing 3 and more days? Would you say the majority of your business is even a week?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We may have through the winter specifically, we might have, and we only have probably 3 or 4 properties. I'm sorry, 3 or 4 properties that we will do a minimum 3-night stay. There are a few of our more quote unquote luxury properties. Beyond that, everything is a 7-night stay.
Yeah. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I rent on Peaks Island, okay? I don't own out there, I rent. I'm out there for 3 weeks, but that's another story. So I get the beach area stuff, I really do. And again, I want to emphasize, I do not want to prevent rentals of properties. That's not the purpose. The purpose is what's in the best interest of the town. And you guys as property owners.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna go to Caitlin. We're gonna do a few more online folks and then I'll come back to the room, I promise.
Hello again. I think so. You kind of answered my question that I had in your last comment, but what I was going to say is I would love to see kind of a list of some of the problems that we're trying to mitigate here and then some data to support that. So like if it is have a number of increased calls, which I know you just said you don't have, or like, is it an increased cost to the sewer system? I think some hard statistics I think would be really helpful, especially if you were to go to a fee-based model, which I would not be supportive of. I would do that. And I mean, I think things like registries would be helpful. If I were to ever actually have a problem at my unit, I would love to have some sort of way of knowing that or notifying, or like somebody being some way of notifying me, which I'm not sure that there is a great way other than the person renting. So I think there's definitely some really good things that could really help organize the industry in Scarborough with some of the direction that you guys are thinking of going in. And just the last person that was asking about, the number of nights, I do have a 3-night minimum for the entire time that I'm open in my seasonal cottage in the summer. And I do fill in any empty spaces in between. So like if I have a Tuesday through Friday and then a Sunday through, Wednesday of the following week, I will open it up and let somebody come in and grab that Friday night. But I also, again, have a much smaller unit. Remember, I have that 200 square foot cottage on Pine Point. And so, and I have a place where somebody wouldn't necessarily want to stay an entire week because I don't have a full kitchen. And so when people come, they're going to dinner 3 nights in a row at the bait shed, and then they go back to Massachusetts, and it's great for me. It's great for them. And I think it's great for at least the state of Maine with the taxes that they're bringing in. So.
Thank you. We'll do one more. Mike Fitzgerald. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am. Thanks. I was just trying to get off mute there, but
yeah, no worries.
Ellen rents our property down at Higgins Beach, right? It's been there for 60 years. I own it with my brothers. We don't do a winter rental. We kind of share that amongst our family. But we're fine with the inspections and all that. We just, without it being rented, we wouldn't be able to have that compound there. And, we've been we've got 50 plus family members that go the first week in August. We rent other cottages down the beach, and it's just been a tremendous experience at Higgins over the years, and just worried that it could get spoiled by whatever you guys are going to devise. But if it's just inspections and the fee, that'll be fine. But it's please, let's just not mess with this, right? It's a great thing. But thanks for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thanks for participating, Mike. All right, I'm gonna go one more. I know I said I was gonna come back to the room. I'm gonna do Christina. And then if there's somebody in the room who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, I'll come to you first.
I would say Christina's spoken before, but Fred has not, before listening.
Okay.
Those two haven't heard yet.
Okay, thanks for helping me keep track.
So
How about we go to Leslie then?
hi, Leslie, you can talk.
I live in Blue Point area and really support the idea of protecting residential communities. Having lived in other places where short-term rentals became very popular and really took over residential neighborhoods and just really destroyed the character of the neighborhood. And short-term rentals are moving into our community in Blue Point, and I'm just very concerned about wanting to preserve a residential community.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely hearing that, especially in neighborhoods where short-term rentals are popping up, where they have had, to make some calls, and some uncomfortable situations have certainly come up. And so I think we're definitely hearing that from some residents. So thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to the room.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
My name's Jeff.
Hi.
I think a fee is appropriate. I think the fee should be very minimum. But I think if your property that you're renting has a certificate of occupancy, it should be up to the code enforcement to do the licensing or process. It would be more something for the fire department. We certainly don't need to add any burden onto code enforcement with the amount of building that's going on in Scarborough. And it's a safety issue, so let the fire department deal with it, the inspection process. We recently did put a unit in our house, an in-law apartment. As far as concerns about sewer impact, they charge us $5,000. I think that covers the sewer board. Okay? For those who are concerned about the added impact on the sewer, that fee should cover. Okay, so that's my opinion of impact on the sewer. And last but not least, it's the responsibility of the landlord to screen the tenant's problem. And if you have a problem, you can do a good job screening the tenant. So the long and the short of it is, you have frequent visits by the police department, you lose your permit, you lose your license, and you can't rent anything. Just like you would if you had a bar, okay, and you had a liquor license. No different. That's my input.
Jeff, can I get your last name?
Saleeby, Saleeby.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy, and I have a condo that I've owned for a very long time down on East Grand, which I used to be one of the very last winter renters that were year round, or should just say year round renters. I came in with three girls getting ready to go off to college a few years back and went back to the weekly rentals. Now I changed it to 3-night minimum because I can make more money at a 3-night minimum to put away and pay taxes, all of that. Don't live in the unit, but I also rent it out in the winter. But I live up the street at Blue Point area and not very far from the ocean, so it makes it easier for me to access the ocean, access my rental. Not everybody has that opportunity. I would like to see, I completely understand we should have a ability for our fire department and our police department to have us registered so they know that this is what the rentals are, who the owners are. The fee I don't have an issue with. I really don't want to see it get locked down to a 3-night only. I don't do a 1 night. I do a 2-night, and I do the 2 nights after my summer rental folks have left, for those who come for week, for the weeks. And it works out great. Sometimes they'll do 2, sometimes they'll do 3, sometimes they'll do a whole week. The entire month of October into November, I have rented until this Wednesday. Which has been wonderful because it's other people that can come and access that and not have a small little hotel room that's costing them the same cost for an entire condo with everything you need in. I understand the concerns. What I'm understanding about it, a lot of the concerns are more police department, fire department, not really about the rentals itself. I truly don't want to see Scarborough put barriers on homeowners. It's hard enough having enough barriers as owners. I still live in the town too, so I'm very involved in the town. I really think we seriously have to think about it, really look at it, and I'm pleased that you are doing this tonight. I'm glad to see that we have some real estate agents as well as management companies. I've been managing my own for years. Matt does his own too. So it's one of those things where it's great to see the community come together. I don't want to upset anybody, but I think we need to be open to ideas with everyone because honestly, I'd like to rent out my house. 12 Byfield Drive, great neighborhood. Ask me to rent it with the condo down at the beach.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to lose that ability. If I decide to move down to my condo for a year and enjoy the beach, I want to be able to do that at my house. But I am, like you said down there at the end, I vet my tenants that come in. Even though it's Airbnb, I vet them. I call and say, okay, if you're coming, this is what I require. And if I don't get it, I'm sorry, I cancel yours. Upfront honesty, right there on my website on Airbnb where I manage it.
We all know, unfortunately, not everybody is as responsible of a
And
renter.
it's
No,
very
and I
likely.
And I,
responsible of the
right,
beach side.
right?
I think it's really important that.
Sounds like
we
you're killing us.
have a registration, you know, because that way the police department knows who to contact. If my tenant can't contact me at that time, you know, and the fire department as well. I have no problem with that. I think it's important that we do have that as a community and we're open about that. I just don't want to see some major restrictions come down the pipe with people who are buying a mile away from the ocean, but yet they still want to rent their house out too. I don't think we should take that away from people.
Okay.
Amy, I didn't catch your last name.
Chamberlain,
Thank you.
L-A-I-N.
I'll go here and then I'm gonna hit anybody who has not spoken online yet.
So my last eviction process on a year-round rental in Woolwich, was in Biddeford. And it took me 7 months to get a tenant to get out of the property. Their lease had expired. I gave them 60, 70 days notice in advance. Just didn't leave. It was all on me to get them out. It cost me about $4,000. I had 15 Airbnbs in Woolwich Beach. Everybody left on time. Never got sent the dime.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, the world is different. When the tenant in your year-round rental, they have 100 rights that you
They have
want, and everything is against you. You should big bet.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. Okay, I'm gonna go online, and then we'll come back to people in the room. And we still have an hour. It's only 6:53, so lots more time for a conversation if people are feeling like, you know, we're not getting enough.
Mike hasn't spoken out either, has he?
I've completely
Yes.
lost track.
Oh, yeah.
The bottom 3 of that.
Oh, I can see them.
All right, we're gonna go with Fred Bolensby.
Yeah.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Yeah, so my name's Fred Follensby and I live on Pleasant Hill Road, close to 77. And Ellen, I'm a client of yours, you know me. So we've rented our house out on probably just 2 occasions over the last 8 years that we've been in Scarborough. We don't live in one of the beach areas though. So I get a little concerned when I hear people say that well, we understand the rental policies in the beach areas. We just don't like to see it in the neighborhoods. I wouldn't want to see my neighborhood transformed into an Airbnb market, but I just want to point out there is a market out there for people like our family who takes advantage of Airbnb once every few years. It supplements our vacations that we go on. And so again, I just want to clarify my one point here is I don't think from an equity standpoint, it's fair to say the beaches can do rentals, but neighborhoods cannot. What is it about beaches that allows them to do rentals that neighborhoods would not? I think there's something needs to be said about that. And I'll yield my time.
Right, can I ask a follow-up? Are you,
Yeah.
are you discussing like short-term rentals in the neighborhoods, or just, are you renting them out for longer than a couple days? Are you doing Airbnb through your neighborhood or your house?
Am I still on?
You are.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, we, like I said, we've only done it twice in the 8 years we've been here, but we rented our house out for a month one time. It was a month one time, and then we rented it for 2 weeks one time. And again, we're both school teachers. We had a summer off. We live in this house. I need to point that out. We live in the house. We're raising kids. Our kids go to the schools here. So did that clarify your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, and I will just say anecdotally, like I don't live in the beach community. We have not ever rented our house, but I do have friends that have school age kids that during the summer, it helps to finance their vacations to rent their house in Scarborough for the 2 weeks that they're gone. And so if that's something that, you know, they're kind of using that revenue from renting their house to finance their own vacation someplace else. And so anecdotally, I have also heard that taking place amongst my peers. I will go to Jake.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So I own a property at 19 East Grand Ave. And then my wife and I, we re-rent 21 and 23 as property managers. We've been on Airbnb renting for the past 5 to 6 years. We've had great success. Some concerns that we have are one, the duration. So we heard some comments about duration, whether it's 1 week, 7 days, 1, 2 days. And I think there have been some good points made, but one to keep in mind is, and I think it's already been brought up, is the size of the units. So we have 3 units that are 200 square feet, and they do great at 1 to 2 days, or 1 day rentals or 2 day rentals. We have a house, we have 3 houses that we manage and rent. Those do much better with the long-term rentals. So putting restrictions on duration, I think, isn't necessarily fair to those smaller units. And at 19 East Grand Ave, for those that don't know, it was an old motel unit that's been condoized. So there's really not much that can change there. They've been there for, I think, 60 plus years. As far as life safety goes, one thing that I'm having a hard time getting my head around, I hear a lot about police and fire and inspections, but has the fire chief and has the police chief, have they chimed in? And is there a concern from their perspective, or is this a concern really just from the public? So I'd be interested in understanding that more, specifically from the fire chief, I think. And then workforce housing, I've had a lot of success as a developer, specifically in New Hampshire. We just turned on 16 units in workforce housing last week. We've been given a lot of money from the federal government. I would urge you to go to the government. We got $3 million of free grant money for workforce housing that came through the state. I mean, that's where your focus for workforce housing should be coming from. I mean, pushing this down onto short-term rentals or any residents, or that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think it's in the development world. That's where the money's at, and the state should be issuing you guys that money. That's all I have.
No more. It's Jean Marie.
Jean Marie wants to connect with Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Want to go to Bev? Great. Bev, we're getting ready to unmute you.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are super duper quiet.
All right, okay. My name is Bev Edwards, and
Hey, Bev, is there a way to get closer to a microphone or?
just a minute. Yes, my husband's family has owned a property.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Bev.
Okay, just a minute.
All right, we want to go to someone else online?
Or can you hear me now? You can hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I hadn't planned on speaking, so I didn't hook my external microphone onto my laptop, but my name is Bev Edwards, and my husband's family has owned property at Higgins Beach for over 60 years. And that almost from its inception, when it was purchased by my husband's mother, at least a portion of the property has been rented so that the taxes could be paid. So I think that's the taxes have always been sort of above the average there at Higgins Beach, and it's been a factor in rentals there for a long time. Ellen's group manages our property and has for the last few years, and it does a wonderful job. And I feel that we are that she does the safety inspection, and she vets the renters, and feel very comfortable with the types of short-term renters that we have had. As far as fees are concerned, I don't have any strong feeling one way or the other for a reasonable fee, as long as that fee directly relates to whatever involvement the city has in inspecting the property, and as long as there is no delay for inspections. I think Ellen mentioned that would be a concern of ours. So thank you for having this. Oh, and the other thing is that I live in Colorado with my husband, and the other owner of the property, the other family member, lives in Pennsylvania. And if we couldn't rent the property on a short-term basis, then we wouldn't be able to keep the property, because we need somebody on site managing and keeping the property up to date and keeping it repaired and up to whatever standards are needed. So it's allowed us to, being able to rent it has allowed us to keep the property in the family. Thanks.
No, thank you for that feedback, Bev. Appreciate it. To the room?
Just a very mild comment here. We've been running for quite a while, and if someone does something on our property that we don't like, or anybody does, the neighbors don't like, they're not gonna get rented to the next year. We've got complete control over that. What's all this hassle about worrying about can't get people out and stuff, as far as part-term, just short-term rentals? Don't rent to them again. I mean, it's kind of junior high school stuff, but don't rent to them again. Thank you.
Sure.
But the one thing that I just want to point out is that doesn't, as far as people who are renting, like through a Vacasa or I don't even know
What the apps are. Sure.
It can be a
Won't seem like
one-time event, and so they're not coming back anyway. And that's what we are seeing in the outlying neighborhoods starting to happen, which again, you kind of lose, there's no responsibility. Whereas if it's an agency that is kind of taking responsibility and told them what they need to do, and they know that they're in town, there's somebody around, the chances very slim that they're gonna try breaking any rules or regulations, in my opinion. So again, I think it comes down to some sort of roster or a small fee base or something. Because other than that, I mean, you've got neighbors who've known you forever, and that's great. And so you have that security at the time being. And I think you let them know that when they do rent, it's very obvious. But when you're distant and not going through an agency, people really, I don't want to be cynical, because we've met wonderful people too, and there are great people that come in rent, but I mean, our kids do it. We know it's the thing to do now. You just get a short-term rental instead of paying for a hotel. But who do you go to if there's a problem? I mean, I just think it's one little bit of security for the neighbors, in my opinion, so. I'm not against it at all. I just think there needs to be some accountability.
Yeah, so were you hand up too?
Yeah,
go ahead. Like mother, like daughter. Go ahead.
I think the focus here is not about restrictions, it is about accountability, because it seems like the concept from town to town is there are little complaints, they may be in the same neighborhood with the same problem property, which comes back to the owner. And then if you are giving a permit, you know, having some type of accountability for that permit, if there's problems, you know, I mean, we just went through all of this in Old Orchard Beach, and they do a great job of, that's exactly what they do, like Matt was saying, they go in and they, you know, they have code enforcement go in, they have a, you know, fire department, it's a 2-year permit. There are very few complaints there as well, so I think if we can focus on that accountability versus the restriction of people's homeowner rights, I think that would be more of a, you know, focus.
An avenue to take. I'm seeing a lot of head nodding and.
Well, and maybe if we show our certificate of insurance that showed that we had an inspection, we can just add it to they can sign off on it as opposed to send something. I mean, I'm just saying.
And there are requirements. I mean,
Duplicates.
Saco as well, they have a list. You go in, if there's a list that says you've got to have, you know, you've got to have your fire extinguishers, you've got to, you know, have your carbon monoxide. I mean, there's a whole list. So for people to get that permit and make everybody even across the board, whether they're renting with an agency or they own it themselves, everybody has to be accountable for that. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody to have places be safe.
Do you wanna go? Yeah. Hold on, no, hold on. I originally called on the daughter of our beautiful parent here, and then she yielded to her mom, so I'm gonna let her go.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that comes to mind often for me is like, especially in business, it doesn't matter unless it's in written format. And so like all of these things that are discussed are already in contract, and you're in contract with these individual people. And I think oftentimes we also throw around the third party, as in VRBOs and Airbnbs and Expedias, and separating about difference for the short-term rentals. But, you know, they're a multi-million-dollar corporation. Call them. You know, that they're in contact with their guests. You can't, they make very hard avenues intentionally because that's how it goes, but and I can understand your frustration with that, because maybe that is what I've heard from secondhand and I haven't physically called in, so maybe your experience is
I
different.
mean, the issue is not with the local realtors, because you have a reputation.
Right, and so,
Right, and
but
word gets around, if you rent to people and you don't address
and
it,
it's not,
it's a problem.
and
So
it's
you're not
not
gonna
just,
let that happen.
yeah, and it's not just in this area. I think everyone has difficulties when they think of the concept of vacation rentals popping up. It oftentimes it's Airbnb or it's individual things. So I think there's higher levels of accountability that can be at that level as well. And then at the end of the day, for those that are in it for the purpose of being able to keep the home or being in business, you only want the people who are going to be nice in your home to stay in your home. Like, we don't want those people any more than anyone else. We don't want the people who aren't gonna take their trash out, or the people who are gonna follow by the town ordinance. Which I can understand that, and it's
Everybody
different.
has different standards.
Correct, and I do recognize that as well, but for the general size, no one wants to upset their neighbor, and though it does happen and it doesn't make it right, I don't think that is the intention there. And I don't, you know, as me individually as property manager, I'm still working until 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, already trying to just bring someone a pillow or trying to, fix their Wi-Fi. So the last call I want is for someone to be upset, but that's why you have someone who, yes, I understand in this case, is local and is there. So if we can put, for those who aren't local, some type of placement where third party can step in to ensure. So that way, because the broader term is no one wants anyone upset. I really don't think so.
I'll go here and then I'll come to you, Sue.
Yeah, I was just gonna quickly say that, all of us, if we have a unit that we're renting and live on the other side, or whatever the case may be, nowadays with the access of information, you should be able to screen your tenants pretty well. And in all honesty, I wouldn't want to bring a sketchy tenant into my neighborhood and impose that on my neighbors, so there's really no excuse for renting to a bad tenant, and it's not 100% foolproof. But if you run a check on them and they don't have felonies and they haven't been in bankruptcy.
No ankle
Right, they still might be loud.
There will be criminal laws.
Sure.
I think you have to do your due diligence. And it doesn't matter whether it's, if you're renting and as a landlord and a tenant relationship, or you're doing business nowadays, you have to kind of identify the people you're doing business.
Yeah, I hear a lot of comments about accountability, is what we're talking about. Sue, and then Scott, great.
I'd like there to be some kind of control on the number of occupants of units as well. I have a house right next door to me that sometimes, I mean, it's rented every week. And I've seen suddenly there'll be 6 cars that all pull up on a Saturday and a trailer, you know, and an RV. And they jam them in. And I mean, how can you even enjoy your vacation? But, you know, they are.
Different,
Sure.
yeah, different people, right? That's.
And you know that Saturday night, it's gonna be pretty crazy and you're used to that, so. But you just hope that it's not gonna be that way every night. But over and over again, especially down at the Point, if you walk around down there during the summer, the number of cars that are parked, because it'll be 3 families that rented a house. And
There's not enough driveway.
not intended, it's maybe a 3-bedroom house. And it was never intended for that many people. And I know personally, the unit that we rent, it's without fail, you know, it's supposed to be a couple and 2 kids, and then suddenly the granny's coming and, you know, the kid's friend. It happens all the time. And
I still think that comes down to the responsibility of the landlord. I mean, I've rented a place on the lake for a week. It says you can't have more than 4 people in the place, you don't have more than 4 people in the place. Are you, the deal that you rented the place for a week and you signed a document saying you agree to that, so. I mean, you know, it's the landlord's responsibility to police it. And then if they don't listen to you, then you don't rent to them again, it might pay the person's.
The problem is when you've got small investor owners, I don't mean small investor like local guys own local condos, it's these bigger guys and gals who are coming in and buying up properties, renting them out, and God only knows who the landlord is. That I see as an issue, and I've heard that not just from Jane's situation, but some other people too. So that's just something to throw into the mix to think, you know, how do you?
Councilor McGee, would you like to say something?
So for those that don't know,
And then I'll come to you, Scott.
I have a property management company. We do 95% of my business is condominium associations. So we don't dabble in short-term rentals or anything like that. But one thing that was coming up in the condos that we managed was the idea of corporate ownership and becoming corporate owners. So you would have Delta might rent a unit out for a year. What they're doing is they're sticking their pilots in there overnight. And I wanted to know if anyone here had thoughts on those specific types of corporate rentals and if they should even be addressed through anything that we would contemplate.
The condo association allows that, yeah.
Not anymore.
Oh.
No, we got ahead of that one. But that was part of the challenge, which
Yeah.
is technically on the lease
Right.
is Delta Corp or whoever, you know.
Right.
And they have a 1-year lease, which does not violate any condo rules, but next thing you know, they're shipping in a different pilot every couple
Right.
nights. That's kind of in the spirit violating what
Right.
we were attempting to do in a condo association. Does anyone have any thoughts on the corporate side of things?
I don't have an issue with it. I've been approached, but I said no. So just because of that in and out, I did furnace finders for the nurses. They said every 3 months.
Yeah.
Which is perfect for the winter. If you don't find a winter tenant,
Right.
that's my last report. But again, I don't want to say no to that because then if you don't find a renter, you at least have them coming in, but they're there for 3 months.
Yep.
But they also pull out really quick.
When their assignment is done.
Yeah, they're gone. They're gone, and then somebody else comes back in because they've taken over, and I will only do it if they do it for the whole winter.
Right.
Yeah, 3 months, one person, next 3 months, another person.
Yeah, Scott Doherty, I just, I've listened to everything, but I sympathize with these people here. I think it's a police situation. If they're coming in, you gotta get out of this trespassing.
Yeah.
I say they should, the people, the offenders should be arrested. I think that's what we should clamp down on. Because, and landlord, they know who they are, they should contact them, and they should call those people, and like you said, don't rent them again. But like you say, it's like, this is a one-time thing, and then it's gonna be somebody different next week that's doing the same thing. So there is problems with it, but on the other hand, I'm all for smaller government and a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, trying to regulate everything and micromanage everybody. And saying some people can go, they can't do that. You can't say some people can and some people can't. He was saying about it's the landlord's problem, but he said it took 7 months to get somebody out. And I'm sure those people were nice as pie. I would rent people and I say that to them, it's your problem. I've rented to people that I thought were great, spectacular. They turned out to be a nightmare.
I think we can all share that.
Not me. And then, no, because I feel guilty. I don't even like to evict them still, because I feel bad for them. But that's just their personality. So I don't know where it'll all come down, but I do think that people should be able to have, accessory units. I mean, I personally have one, and I bought another property, and I wanted to have one there, which town told me I couldn't. But they say if you live in it for 3 months, you can. So, like somebody down Prout's Neck, they have the house in New York, and they have a house that they stay in for a month or two in the summer. They can have an accessory unit. So I told him, I says, well, I'll live in that house for 3 months. That will be my summer home. And he says, well, now you're trying to, the code enforcement guy says, you're trying to play the game. It's not a game, it's fact. You say, you got it right on your paperwork that I can have an accessory unit. It says in your paperwork that in New York, it can have an accessory unit, but I couldn't. So, the locals, and like you say, corporate stuff and whatever, yeah, maybe you should claim down that. But the locals, leave it alone. Leave it alone. I don't think it's too big of a deal. The Airbnb is a problem, and in Portland, a lot of places they are having trouble with that. But I don't know how big it is. I don't know what the answer is to that. I just.
Why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why. Generate all this conversation.
By the way, I should.
Well, you might not want to now.
Would you be opposed to just registering or just saying that you're renting your accessory to let the town know? I'm just curious. I mean.
Yeah, well.
Just, you don't even want.
The big thing is fees, no. I mean, we have so many fees and taxes. I mean, you can say we're not raising taxes, but they've raised fees in this town over the last 10 or 15 years immensely. I don't know what the numbers are.
But
I
I'm
gotta
saying
figure
registration,
that.
so that
But
if you're gone and something crazy goes
accountability.
on, they can at least.
Have somebody to contact. Yeah.
Is that a problem with, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it is in a way, because it's another government bureaucracy, and I know that you have to do this, and you gotta get inspections, and you gotta check it, and believe me, I dealt with code enforcement, I do this and stuff, and I don't like it. I don't wanna have to do that. But I get where your situation is.
I don't like a new neighbor.
You've gotta,
Have you found out who the owner is, so you can contact that specific owner right here in town, and look up the address? It has a name on file, it's all public.
We know who the owner.
And we're not that I think that's fair.
We've talked to
I'm
other
just
people that
curious.
also
Fair.
have run
Wondering
into
if they
this
have.
and have not called. Because we just feel like it's an extra strain on the, and again, you
They're-
get,
they're
shooting
neighbors.
yourself in the foot for being nice, right? I mean,
Yes,
I
I do.
usually.
I have some runs to your trailer the other day. You were so nice to them. I was like, watching the slow motion while, and you were so nice, and that's what we nice people take advantage of. So I'm just, okay.
That was a unique situation.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump back online. Let's go to Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi there. I was just going to make a suggestion that if we did go to, something where the town, you had to register your short-term, long-term, whatever form of rental you had, that you could kind of do like a 3 strikes and you're out thing, which would help these folks on Spurwink. Like if you get calls and it's tracked, and you get like 3 in a year, because we'll all get one bad renter, I'm sure, here and there. But if you get 3, they don't give you the permit for the next time you re-up it, if it's 2 years, if it's 1 year, if it's 5 years. But it could just be a way to kind of get the owner's attention to say, hey, you know what, like, this is a privilege that you have you have this for a reason, because this benefits you financially. But if you don't play by the rules, this is a way to hold you accountable. That's all.
Great. I'm definitely seeing some head noddings. I think that the flip side, and I'll say it a little louder, the flip side of that same coin from some of the people in the room is, if you happen to have an Airbnb or rental next door to someone who is a frequent flyer with public safety, then maybe you're going to have an unfair number of complaints lodged against your rental because they just flat out don't like that you're renting.
Right.
And so, and I just, and I don't know what my opinion is on that yet, but that is, I think, kind of from my audience here in the front row, the flip side of that same point. But
Doesn't the complaint have to be valid?
Yeah.
Validate.
Legitimate, like.
Well, that's.
well, so that's like kind of this level. I think that's the level we're trying to get to, right? Is what warrants a strike, right? And so then if we're going to regulate it, we have to define it, right? And so that's part of that bigger process, that question, I think. Sure. Thank you, Katie. Mike, would you like to speak again? Fitzgerald?
Mike, you're muted.
He's had his hand up yeah, he might just have, it might be an old hand too, that I do that. Okay. Let's try.
It's a little wrinkly.
Jake, would you like to speak again?
Go, Jake.
Nope, sorry, all set. Nope.
No worries. How about Ellen Jennison? Would you like to speak?
I feel like I've had a lot to say, so thank you for listening to me.
Okay, no worries.
Make a comment regarding occupancy. And while I totally sympathize with the woman in Pine Point who has too many cars and too many people in her neighborhood, because I have seen that, and it can be a bit of a struggle for us to keep that in control. I believe the town of Scarborough does have very specific occupancy limits. I think that information is available through the fire department, and it is, certainly no one on couches or air mattresses on the floor. And it is, depending on the size of the bed, 1 body to a twin bed, 2 to a double queen or king. And occupancy is supposed to be specifically designated in rentals. And again, that speaks somewhat to regulation, but I did just want to make that point that occupancy and number of parking are things that are designated by the town.
Well, so Autumn, we have Autumn here from our planning department, and she was maybe can weigh in a little bit just with some information.
I'm not aware of any occupancy levels other than in specific building codes. It's not a requirement to state how many bedrooms. We don't have anything for bedrooms, but we have parking based on the single family use. So it's 2 spaces for a home, that sort of thing. But we don't have. So the issue would be if you converted a single family home that was CO'd with the 2 parking spaces, and then you convert it, and we don't know if you have enough parking spaces. But
with the accessory units, it's right in the paperwork, there's 2 people per unit. That's all you're supposed to have in there.
And we used to require 1 parking for that, and then LD 2003 took that away. So we can't require an extra parking space for those ADUs anymore. But
yeah, that's definitely something to
So
consider.
you have no recourse if it's a single family home and now there's 5 cars,
right.
7 cars, they're parked all over the lawn and driving out of the street, you really can't see anyone.
We only have one more hand up online. Christina, your hand is up.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. All right. Many of my comments already actually have been answered by the other commenters. Thank you so much for all of that information. Great information. My only point now, I guess, is that before this is a rush to council, bringing it to like a more or less private council decision, I think that this type of forum needs to continue to happen until like everyone can get on the same page. I think that the nuisances is the biggest issue, like that needs to be addressed to like private property abutters that are next door to these homeowners that are renting out their property. And I say, yeah, call the cops on them. That's an ordinance. Call the cops. They get called 2 or 3 times. They get fined. That goes to the property owner. The property owner is going to do a better job of keeping better counsel to who they end up renting to. And I think that the ADL is a separate issue from this short-term rental. I mean, yeah, you're renting, it's a rental situation, but I think that that's a tag on that has to have a whole different conversation versus the Higgins Beach rental, the Pine Point rental, and then the random individual neighborhood type short-term rentals. So that's about it. And I do think that including fire and safety in this discussion would be super relevant. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I have my thoughts again.
Okay, we're ready.
Just to go over some things, the registry seems like it makes sense in this situation. These are nuisance, owners that live next door, it sounds like, and that something should be taken care of. You should be able to, there should be like a 3 strikes you're out idea. But registering is the only way you'd be able to really track those people down. That seems like it makes a lot of sense. If I don't have a problem registering my rental, because if there was a problem, I'd want to know about it. Airbnb.
Who's registering? It's the property owner.
You would only, Airbnb, we're able to see who is renting our properties. So if they have a higher rating, we'll actually take them as a renter. If they give us a hard time, we'll give them a negative review. Nobody knows beforehand. It's blind. So if in this case, if they were a nuisance and we had heard about it, we would hope to hear about it. We'd make sure that our neighbors would have to deal with that again. And so, yes, you might have to deal with somebody while they're there. But I understand that's problematic, but I think that shutting down a lot of or managing a lot of these others could be a real problem. We do have something that can take care of that. And health and safety, of course, that makes sense. Reporting, if we did have a registry, we would be able to then see what some of the issues were out there. We're hearing everyone, words like everyone and we hear, and all the time. We need some concrete numbers to be able to figure out what we're really talking about. So really only 5 people that we heard from. So I think that's interesting, and we need to figure that out. The discussion about nights, how many nights, that's just more management of this. And if it's already been said, if I in a shoulder season want to rent for a couple of nights because that's what somebody can afford to do, and this is a good rental for them, a good situation, I feel like we ought to be able to do that. Again, as long as it's not a nuisance for people. Beach versus other areas. I'm not on the beach. So a lot of us aren't on the beach. Why should we not be able to build equity in properties the way that others can? It wouldn't, and that was made clear earlier by, I think Fred said that. So and who's going to control all that? So that, I just urge that we wouldn't look at overlays in certain places where you can do it versus others. I live off a home road. If I want to rent over there because somebody prefers the pasture or the woods, that's just as viable as renting on the beach. And it could offer other opportunities for people that can't afford to be on the beach during their stay. And again, they have to be good neighbors, and they have to be good renters. And workforce housing, I don't think I have to just reiterate, this probably isn't it's not going to help us to control short-term housing to help with workforce housing, which we need. Well, so those are my thoughts.
Yep. Thank you. Who's next?
our people who, service the houses, if we're only going once a week, they only get paid for once a week. So if we have 3 times a week, they're getting paid 3 times a week. So we're supporting a huge, vast number of people that are servicing these places. And, you know, I agree with gentlemen back here that, somebody might not be able to afford a week. So I would like to invite them to come and enjoy our main for 2 nights. That's a weekend. I mean, people drive up from New York on the weekend and really enjoy it, and they spend money on dinner, and we clean out their refrigerator, and then they restock it again on Monday. So I think the nightly stays thing is kind of a moot point. So they're willing to pay, we're willing to house them.
I'm gonna just push back on that workforce thing just close, because that's my job. And that is that if we don't have workforce housing, you're not gonna have people work in these stores or whatever. So the people who are coming in for these 1 or 2 night stays, they're not gonna have any place to eat at or go to because they can't hire people to work there. So that's all I'm saying about that. And
I feel like one of the other things too is that when you think of like, I guess when it comes to mind for me too, which I'm younger, I get it, you know what I mean? I understand, and I work in the same town, you know, I live next to the same town I work to, but when you think of Oceanside, I can't really think of too many Oceanside towns where it's considered affordable. Because that's, you know, when you think of the term of ocean, you think, you know, the second home or vacation or a luxury. So the concept of affordable housing in an Oceanside town is kind of a double-edged sword because not, you know what I mean, no Oceanside town.
right, and I'm not talking about making them affordable or whatever, or using that, it's just having the volume available housing. And hoping that it's not all taken up by short-term stock, that they're sitting empty. When they could be housing people who work in the workforce, that's all. And I'm just throwing that out there, just because my concern is with this new LD 2003. My concern is you're gonna have a lot of people, we're doing blah, 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 but they're not gonna rent it out unless they can rent it for, I don't know what you guys even get now, say $400 a night or whatever. And this, anyway, that, I'm just throwing that out as a concept.
Yeah.
Because I'm also on the Affordable Housing Committee, so that's why.
Just a thought on that, because if there was a way to solve part of this problem with that, wouldn't that? How many rentals, right, there's 400 rentals right now, is that?
Somewhere between 3 and 4.
We think 70% of them are down on the beach. Those aren't gonna be.
No, they
but
aren't,
if you're saying,
actually.
but the rest of them, so let's just say the rest of them are the rest of us who own off the beach and wanna rent it. If we can't afford, you know, we have to pay mortgages, if we can't afford to pay that mortgage with the rent, and we have to. And the current rate that we're gonna put it out there as a rental everything has to walk, I don't think anything's walking away with extra cash here. So I don't think that the short term, the workforce is gonna rent that house. And if we were.
Well, it depends, it depends.
Well,
It
maybe
depends.
if they put 4 or 5.
Remember, you got the market, it's supply and demand.
I am super duper looking forward to our next Councilor Corner Live on affordable housing. Hold on.
Different thing.
Call Jake.
Hold on.
Call Jay, I know,
Call
I'm
Jake.
interested in knowing.
I'm gonna yield to Nick here, because he had said that he would like to say something. We'll keep going around, I
So,
promise.
I know the topic tonight is short-term rentals, and that has gotten a lot of attention. However, as a council, I guess my question would be, should we be looking at all rentals? Should we, if we pursue a registration, should it be for any rental in town, or should it be short-term specific only? And I'll give you my thought process. I believe I heard from Mr. Doherty that, you know, uniform application of the rules would be best. Why would I register if I have a 30-day rental versus a 6-month rental? Now, my other concern is couldn't you have a 6-month rental that is also problematic that we would not maybe know it is a rental? And should we have access to that registration information? Should we have access to that owner's contact information? So hate it to broaden the topic, but if we're gonna craft something, and there is a registration process, do you require it for every rental in town or only short-term rentals? Just curious to hear,
Does anybody do that in the state? I'm not aware of any.
I'm just curious to hear feedback.
Old Orchard, I'm hearing Old Orchard.
There's a lot of things.
Any rental, right?
Yeah, less.
A business one. A business one.
So there was a chart, this is the first meeting I knew about to come to. And I listened, I thought to one, but I think it was not so much about short-term rentals.
Sure.
Did you share that somehow I called Liam and was speaking, because that's who I was told, that I wanted to get some background. And he shared a wonderful chart that I think you made up with all the different, our surrounding towns. Now, Scarborough, we know, has a unique character. That's why most of us live here. We love it. But there are other other bordered water towns or similar. Everybody has, it seems like, is coming to the point where they're discussing this.
Yes.
And they're either saying, nope, we don't want anything to do
Reg
with it.
licensing, Cape
Yeah, and
Elizabeth,
so that
Freeport,
chart format, that
Saco.
he happened to send me, I didn't bring it with me, but was that discussed at your last meeting? Because that to me was, it was
What other
really
towns doing?
helpful as far
Yeah,
as.
rather than try and reinvent, I mean. we-
Yeah.
And you know, honestly,
This is
I
very
feel
much
encouraged.
information gathering mode.
It's not like I don't have anything to do. Trust me, I was multitasking. I do a lot of this. Everyone who gets texts from me knows I'm always multitasking. But I found that the counselors who had put these in place in Cape Elizabeth, Falmouth, Old Orchard, I spoke to Southport, Cape Elizabeth, I don't know. I talked a lot and I took notes. And almost all of them were really pleased with, they had worked endless hours, like, you know, everyone's trying to do. And I just think it would shortcut if we could share that information and say, yeah, we don't want that hassle and we don't want to make that mistake. But like Mark said, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? We could at least use as a springboard their idea. I mean, some of them don't have any kind of, it's just registration and maybe $10.
A community that runs parallel to what's Scarborough is, and you could have a comparison, but you know, the other part of it too is that like you said, Scarborough is very unique. So it's hard to have another town that you can compare it to what they're doing. But my question would be is why would you need any registration process for rentals under, over 30 days?
I think for the same point of if you're in a neighborhood and it's a 2-month rental, and there's a problem, owners off in Europe, you know, who do I call? You know, and
I would think you just call it home, but yeah.
and also, I mean, just in general, understanding what we have for rental going on and where. I mean, there's.
But the problem, more problems would be caused by probably tenants that are renting for less than 30 days, if they're there for a week, if they're there for 2 days. I mean, if you're gonna rent to somebody for over 30 days or whatever, you should probably screen them a little bit better. I don't know.
I think also what's interesting is that the way ADUs play into this. I mean, you can have probably you probably might see an increase in single family homeowners with an ADU that are using that now as a rental for supplemental income.
Right.
We won't have any idea that that's going on unless we have some form of registration. If we exempt anyone under 29 days, we'll never know what's really going on there. And is that good or bad? Is there life safety? I would imagine if they built the ADU and got approved the code, there is. But just the thought, that's why I wanted to ask, you know, I mean,
it's gotta be good overall because it's adding housing that we desperately need. Someone's gonna live. That's right. You know what I mean?
do we want to know that they're doing it?
Yeah, and that was the whole point of that whole ADU thing, was to increase housing
Sure.
from the state level.
I think that comment like kind of teases out and some other comments that were just made that we are very much in the information gathering part. And I don't think anybody on Scarborough's town council wants to reinvent the wheel. But we also appreciate that our kind of most successful endeavors start with a lot of public input. And so, and we know as a community that our community members want to have this level of engagement. These things have been very successful ordinance meetings when we can get the proper notice out, and it's tough. If you're not looking through our ordinance schedule, you may not know that this is coming up. And so creating these kind of satellite events and then advertising them as such, you know, brings people out so that we can get this kind of this feedback. But you are currently looking at the sitting ordinance committee, you know, not adjourned, but, or not, not in session, but we, you know, just so that everybody kind of has, an idea of where we're at, with the election coming up next week, the council will reorganize. And so you may have 3 different people who are going to take this up at ordinance in 2024. We're going back in time. In 2024. And so, you know, we're kind of laying the foundation for those conversations to happen. I anticipate as a counselor that because surrounding communities are having these conversations, they are taking these things up, that it's important for Scarborough to get out ahead of that and to have these conversations. So we didn't want to wait for the reorganization to happen before we started these conversations. But we're not meeting, ordinance is not meeting in November. And with the reorganization, there's a chance they won't meet in December either. And so we're looking really at the next time a formal body of the Scarborough Town Council meets would be out into January. And so we're playing the long game, at least for right now, in terms of developing anything that would you know, be promoted to the level of a committee meeting and then council. Just to kind of give everybody peace of mind, we are not on a fast track here by any stretch, I would not say. And again, these are just my opinions. That's why we have these forums.
And I can just add to that, having been on the council probably longer.
Yep.
That this has come up over and over and over again, and I've been one who's always pushed back on it and said, well, why would we want to bother with that? We have time point, we have hated speech, we have whatever, but we're starting to see a shift. Or I'm starting to feel and see a shift, that's all. But it's a long game, as she said, it's a long game. It's not like, yeah, we're gonna in January institute, you know, this, that, or the other thing. No, that's not the point.
I'll go to the back and then I'll come back up front.
Does Scarborough have a cap on building permits for new construction?
We do.
Yes. So that's to promote housing?
We have actually, there are 10. Matthew, there are 10 permits. There are 10 permits not affected by the general 10 that are set aside for workforce housing. I had not one developer grab any of them. Are you gonna grab one?
Absolutely.
Good, all
When
right.
workforce housing goes to $775 on a minimum price point, we'll do it.
7, yeah. Okay, man.
All right.
When you're trying to promote housing.
I'm gonna point you to about 2 years worth of videos.
Yeah,
We're
real.
supposed to start.
Right, it's been a long haul on that topic.
Stop approving.
Back to the front.
Yeah, so I do want to say, I really appreciate you taking this approach because we've been actively involved in Old Orchard Beach and other communities that have put things in place that there are a lot of lawsuits because they were not done in this type of capacity where you can actually base your, you know, your facts on things that are going on. And, you know, to look at your ordinances already in place. And I think that you making this decision here is huge. I'm gonna commend you on that.
Thank you.
You put in a request. I have no more. No worries, no worries. We're all doing double and triple duty. I have no more hands up online at the moment. Anybody else in the room care to wrap us up here?
Are there any nuisance ordinances that they can use to call? I mean,
I think, I don't want to talk past anybody, and I certainly don't want to speak for our residents who are here, you know, representing their specific situation. And so what I will say is, I think we're all well aware that if you have a problem happening next door, you can call the police.
Okay.
No, That being said, and I say that recognizing, you know, I think we all know we have a great public safety department.
Yes.
Everybody operates differently and everybody's comfort level is different. And everybody's kind of tolerance level is different. And so I think what we're hearing from some of our residents is that they don't want to have to call the police. Like, is there something that we could do before it elevates to the level of me now being responsible for having to call the police on my neighbors? And so I think that that's, you know, there's some conversation and some meeting ground in the middle there where are we just putting this right back on our residents and saying, well, just call public safety or call the non-emergency line if you have a problem. And I'm not sure that necessarily, you know, feels very fulfilling. And so I want to make sure that we don't talk past each other and then we acknowledge that, you know, it doesn't feel good to call the police on your neighbors 2, 3, 4 times during the summer, 6, 7, 8 times, however many times it is. And so is there something that we can do before it rises to that level? And is that our responsibility as a council to do that? And that's why we have these conversations. If that makes sense.
I would, that's very well said, because it's not easy to just call the police on a neighbor. We're trying to be neighbors.
Right. But it's not the
And-
neighbor, it's their
Yeah,
tenant.
but you don't know, just for you don't know who
It's-
you're calling the police on. And
Exactly.
That's
that
true.
can be scary as well.
Well, they,
You
can you
know,
not do it
that's-
They want to give the
anonymously?
benefit of the doubt.
And another thing, as far as I said, I was in the real estate world for quite some time. It wasn't here. And now you're able to, when you're showing some properties, it's pretty well known. If it's a beach community, there's a high chance that you're gonna have rental property next to you, right? And you certainly are gonna answer your potential buyer in that way. Things are changing fast. And so 10 years ago, it was almost unheard of that if you were deciding not to purchase in a beach community and outside in the outskirts in a neighborhood, it's pretty much, it's understood between a realtor usually, and sometimes the words are there and sometimes they're not. We're going to a neighborhood. You're gonna get that feeling of, hey, if, you know, God forbid your kid, you're not there to pick up somebody at the bus stop. Don't worry, you'll have this neighbor, that there are people around. You've got that sense of just some kind of connection. And now I think that the way society is changing, obviously, that we understand now it's a ripple effect. Airbnbs are going to be here forever. I mean, I can't imagine them not. And short-term rentals and rentals, but I think people coming in and purchasing, which it is become your lifeblood. You don't want to have to leave because now it's just the characteristic of what we thought was a neighborhood is different. And so I'm just, you know, you do your due diligence as a realtor, and now it's kind of giving you a little more responsibility to let them know that, hey, I'm not promising. I mean, there's no promises, right? You tell them go by in the morning, go by it when the school bus gets out, go by at 5 o'clock to check out the traffic patterns of weekends versus.
We can't comment on
Right. But I'm just saying, it's just one more level and things have changed and they're not gonna stop.
Gonna add that when I looked at all of these communities, several communities have really complicated ordinances and several communities have very simple registration. But one of the things that I did like about some of them is the registration list was online and available. So if you were looking to move into a neighborhood, you could scan that and say, oh, there's
These are the people who rent in my neighborhood.
Exactly, fair, and you can make a choice, and that might be, that's one of the positive things about registration, just having that out there for public knowledge.
And again, I think simple, like everything, simple is
Really
best.
simple.
I mean, who needs all that confusion? It's bad enough now, I gotta be careful, but like the dog license, the dog laws, they're different for every, you hear, wait, I didn't
know that I wouldn't be on.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't make it so complicated.
We have it
Right.
consistent in the town, you might.
So
Sometimes
sorry to hear that you're going through.
sometimes licensing is just recognized as a responsibility by that person,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, and
And I think it's very difficult because sitting here too, as not just a property manager of my own, but owner in my home, it's disheartening to hear this. I think it's great we're having the community come out and do the support, whether it's business or not. But we have to also remember that there's a select few that we're gonna have issues with. It's gonna happen every now and then. We have no control over that. I truly just don't want to see hands being tied to us or anybody who buys in our community and says, well, they're a couple miles from the beach. Let's Airbnb it and see how it goes. I just don't want to see that much government on something that everybody has a right to do. And I think we need to start looking at those particular calls, because I don't know what some of those calls are. I've heard so much discussion on them, but not really what they are. Heard rumors, there's a lot in the town about it, but again, let's make sure we're not punishing everybody in town for those select few we have issues with. Because what I'm hearing is 90% of those calls should have been to the police. And it should have been to the town, and it should be to the owners. I don't want to be held accountable for someone that's doing issues, but I'm not having issues at my rental. Or my Airbnb that's in a neighborhood that I've spoke to my neighbors about it, where I was saying I might do this. Okay, great, we know who to contact. No problem with registration, just be very careful. I really don't want to have things tied on where we can make our own community and keep it the way that it is.
but you are doing a business. So there is that.
Yes, but I
difference
also
when you
lived in
know,
the
as a
home.
homeowner, you're
I'm
a
a
homeowner,
homeowner, I manage my own rentals.
right?
I have some in Saco, I have some in Scarborough, I live in Scarborough, I taught in Scarborough. I was also a real estate.
No, I
agent.
appreciate it.
So I get all the different avenues, but I've been yelled at because I use my condo as a business, but that's my choice.
Right.
In order for me to keep that, so I can retire to it, I rent it out to pay those taxes and also pay for other things to help my kids go to college. But that's my choice. I don't want to be depicted and told, that I can't do something. Because of a select few in town, we're not looking at that very specific reason of what's happened in town and why we're all sitting here at the table. Yes, I know it's coming up, all the towns are discussing it, but I also don't want to get our town into something where we're in this box and that's it. And we can't get out of that damn box. I'm sorry,
But I think if
whether
we're,
you own a business or not.
I think, no, I appreciate it. I think we're naive to think it's not gonna grow bigger.
No, I'm not
And
being naive.
like
I
I
know
said,
it's growing.
we own in Portland, we rent.
Yeah.
And, do I like the bureaucracy of Portland? Absolutely not. But we registered the rental and the fire comes by and they, did their inspection. We had to do what we had to do, make sure that everything was operational and everything else. And so, but it is a business,
Yeah.
And so with that, you don't wanna say you want bureaucracy, but as a business, you
I'm not
just
saying-
fall into that.
I'm not
when you
saying
start
we
to rent.
can't go ahead and do registrations and hold
wants
the
to-
businesses
Yeah.
accountable. What I'm saying ultimately is because of the select few and what I'm hearing about, let's not make this a huge hot button topic.
No, I
It's
don't want
causing people to be
bureaucracy.
upset because there's a lot of people that could lose a lot of what they have. Because if you remember down in Pine Point area, that was known as a very, very low income housing. All the fishermen were there, all lived there. You go to Higgins, you go to Calvert, it wasn't known as that.
Right.
So we've come far circle with where Blue Point is now, with Pine Point. And that still includes Blue Point, Pine Point is Scarborough. Whether you're Higgins or around there, I just don't want to see us being so policed that we can't go outside of our own properties and be comfortable about it. No problem registering, no problem paying a fee. Beyond that, I don't.
You guys, I sincerely thank everybody who made the time to come out tonight. You guys make these events successful. Like, this is the reason that I serve the council, is to do this kind of public engagement. I'm gonna go home and feel great tonight that so many people came. So thank you so much, for getting this conversation started and for being here tonight. I'll turn it over to Nick if he has any last words.
Thank you.
Great, and so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap. Thank you for those who participated online and joined us online. I hope everybody has a great night.